Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome again to this new video about how to set up the Oreca LMP2 car. The basic setup is already very good, but I will try to help you to improve it. And please note that there will be an update on the tires of this car, which will be coming very soon, I think by the end of this week or the next week. But since the release of this car, I think there were two big updates. They didn't change the philosophy of how to set up the car. The behavior changed, but not the philosophy of how to build it. So the first thing to look at is the aero packages available for this car. There are 5 packages. The standard one provides the most downforce, and Le Mans provides theoretically the least downforce and the least drag. So first one, we have lower top speed but very good turning and very good braking performance, and the last one, we have very good top speed. We struggle a little bit with turning, and we have lower braking performance due to lower front downforce. But usually we use Le Mans package because it has the least drag and it is very fast, and we have too much downforce with this package. But for this video, we'll stay with the standard aero package because the setup approach will not change a lot. Next step, which is very important and applies to every setup you want to do. So I have chosen the Sebring track, the Oreca LMP2, and I have to deal with the session settings. Very important steps before starting building any setup. So time scale should stay normal, and sample weather should be scripted, because I will explain it later. So opponents, I don't care. I don't need any AI when I develop my setup. So I have 0. And on practice, I have to set up the weather with the same temperature across the whole session. I don't want to have variable weather conditions when I am developing a setup. The weather conditions should stay exactly the same. Okay, so we will increase a little bit the temperature, which takes away a little bit of performance, but it's usually the temperature used on every race by every league. Usually they use temperature between 19 and 29. So I will choose 26, and I will try to have the same value, so the same weather condition for the entire session. Okay, so my practice time is 60 minutes. For me, in 60 minutes I should have a good setup. This is a personal challenge. 60 minutes and I'm done. I have, for me, the very good setup, a very competitive, and under 60 minutes. Okay, now very important, because we have chosen here sample weather scripted, it unlocks these options. So real road with some tracks we have rubber preset, so we have already rubber set on the track. We will not be practicing on a green surface. If you want green, you can choose green. You can choose naturally progressing. If you have AI enabled, if you have 20 cars, you can choose it. Okay, you can choose heavy preset, so a lot of rubber, or too little rubber, or medium rubber. Saturated, I think it's the maximum. The autosave is the user, so if you have already practiced it on this track, the game will save the rubber. So for us, I use usually medium. It's usually the one used by every league for every race. And railroad time scale should be static, which means that the rubber will not build throughout the session. It will stay the same, so we'll have the same grip level for the 60 minutes. So always we test the setup and we build this setup on a perfect static condition. We don't want to build a setup on a track that is building progressively the rubber, so the grip is getting better and better, or we are building a setup on a session where the temperature are decreasing or increasing. So we need to be clear. This is important. Okay, now we are on the track. So we go straight to the garage. We set the car. So the fuel, we don't for the fuel I usually set the car with the maximum fuel, because I'd like to replicate the race conditions first, before going into hot lapping. So the gears we can't touch anything here, but we can only change the engine mixture. So we have qualification. Some teams use qualification for the whole race. It depends, but it's not always the fastest way. So qualification gives you a little bit more of power, but consumes much more fuel. Okay, it's useful when you have fresh tire. When you have fresh tires, you can go quicker, but when your tires get warm, you will need to go to race or race lean. So race lean saves a little bit of fuel, but still fast. You will not really notice a difference between race and qualification. So I will keep it at race lean. Okay, we will keep it at race. Tire. So on the basic setup, we have tire pressure at 160 for RFactor 2, and the official cars developed by the studio put the pressure at the minimum possible, which is 140 kph. Regarding Camber, the Camber, my personal preferences, I use always the minimum camber possible. So for this car we have minus 1.5. I usually use camber between 2 and 2.6. Okay, it depends on the track, but I don't go any higher. 2.6 is the maximum. For the rear, so the maximum is 1.6, which I use, but it depends also on the track. I use 1. Usually I use 1 or less. The minimum is 0.9, but I usually use 1 or 1.2 is a good value, and a good very good combination. Maybe 2.6 at the front and 1.4 at the rear, or 1.2 it really depends on the track. Okay, so braking. The brakes, I try always to put the maximum brake bias to the front, because it's very easy to lock the rear, and I reduce the max pedal force. So 90 is good, 94 for qualification, and of course these are my personal preferences, and 88 for safe racing. So I usually use 90. Brake duct blanking. So when it's open, you cool more the brakes. When it's closed, the brakes will not be cooled as fast as when it's open. So keep it at 25 or open, because the brakes on the Oreca gets very hot very quickly. So I usually use it open, especially for short tracks when there are so many braking points. I usually keep it open. For fast tracks, I keep it at 25. Chassis adjustment, you cannot do anything. Steering wheel range, I keep it at the maximum, which is already low. Now we get to the hard part. So as I said at the beginning, the basic setup is good, and I mean it is very good. But the first thing I do is on RFactor 2 I remove any pakers. Really, you don't need them at all. Even at Le Mans, you don't need the pakers at all. On the first version of the car, the pakers were very useful, but for this version of this car, pakers are not useful at all. So take away pakers and you have the maximum mechanical grip possible. Next step. So anti-sway bars, 4 at the front, 2 at the rear is a good combination, but you may overheat the rear. So to be safe, I prefer detached anti-sway bar on the rear, and then I will adjust the front, depends on the track. If it's fast track, I will add anti-sway bar. If it's slow track, I will reduce the anti-sway bar on the front. The toe in, it's good. I usually reduce the toe, so I usually go with the minimum toe in and toe out, because it takes away top speed and hits more the tires. So I need to keep my tires as cool as possible. Okay. Then the spring rates. The higher the front spring rate, the more direct will be the car. So I mean, it will follow your steering inputs very quickly. Okay. The car will feel, of course, rigid. It's the same for every car, every setup, but it has more steering and it is more quick when you on the transition between corners, left and right. And the quicker the front, the more the rear will be sliding. Okay, but this combination, when you see the front spring stiffer than the rear on the Oreca LMP2, is a good combination. I usually go this, let's say 1000 at the front and 900 at the rear is a good combination, or 1000 on this both sides, or maybe 1100 and 1000 on the rear, but those are the good values, or 900 on the front and 1000 on the rear. For me, I found these are the gives you a good balance. It's not too soft and it's not too stiff. Okay, and the spring weights, if they are very soft, the car will bottom out. And this is the most important part on this section, is the ride height. You need to adjust the ride height in order to avoid any bottoming out on the track. And this car, especially the rear, is always bottoming out. Even at 10, the maximum is 10 centimeters. At high speed, the rear of the car will bottom out. When the rear of the car touches the ground, you will lose any grip. Okay, so the most work to do on this car is to find out the good ride height on the front and on the rear. Especially the rear is very important. So for me, by experience, the values of the ride height I use is between 4.5 at the front and 6 at the front. So 4.5 and 6, and the rear is between 7.5 and 9 centimeters. And of course it depends really on the track. So for me, and something like this is good if the car doesn't bottom out, or 5 centimeters on the front, 7.5 on the rear. It should be a good start. Regarding the bumpers, so I prefer using softer bumpers on the rear and harder ones on the front. So the default values are not very bad, but I usually soften a little bit the slow bump. It gives more braking performance, and I soften the slow rear rebound to give more traction out of the corners. Okay, so the aerodynamic. For the standard aero package, which is with this one, is the front splitter. We use rear wing P3 or P4, and of course it depends on the track, but P3 is more stable than P1 or P2. You can use P1 or P2 for qualifying, but it will be very dangerous on the race because the rear tires will get very hot. So stay with P3 and P4 for the standard aero package. For Le Mans package, you will use only P1 rear wing. Okay, what's next? Traction control at 4, 5 or 6 good values. It depends on how you manage the throttle. And the differential settings. So the power differential settings, it controls the rotation of the rear wheels under acceleration. So the more power differential you use, the more understeering you will have out of the corner, and the lower you will have more oversteering out of the corners. But by experience, generally these values are perfect. 45% power, 60% coast. The coast is it controls the rotation of the rear tires under braking. So higher values you will have more understeering on the braking into the corner. Lower values you will have oversteering into the corners, especially when you are off brakes and suddenly you lose the rear, so you need to add more coast. The preload is more when you are off throttle, off braking on the fast corner or on the mid corner, fast corner, or even mid, not very fast but mid speed corner. When you lift completely, the preload takes effect. So more preload, more understeering mid corner, lower preload, more oversteering at mid corner. 80 is a good value to start with. If it's raining, under rain, you increase the value as much as you can. 120 on rain track is a good value. I think that's it. I hope this video is helpful. I think it's a little bit too long, but it's very important because this car is complex to set up. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them into the comments and to give any feedbacks. I will try also to do same video about the GT3s and the GTEs when I have time. Thank you guys for watching. See you next time.